Open the show.
Alright, I need to borrow your agenda. Yeah, there you go. Alright. I'd like to call to order the May 20th meeting of the Town of Newcastle Environmental Review Board. Welcome, everyone. Both here and virtually. Alright, first order of business is to approve minutes, Dennis?
Yep.
Okay. Which, just from last week, just from last month, the April 15th meeting?
Yep. Everything else up to date.
Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? Do not. No? Okay. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
Okay, second?
Second, sure.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Alright, passes unanimously. Excellent. All right, first up on the agenda, we have a wetlands permit application, Michael Finizio, who's here for the app.
I'm here for the application.
Very good.
I am Philip Holland, architect, data architecture here. And I believe the landscape architect, Matt Pop, is also here. But I think he's logging on, so I can start with the presentation.
Terrific. Before you do, Dennis, did you want to do anything to orient us before we go to the applicant?
Sure, I mean, the property, has an existing wetland, and it was delineated. I'm, fine with the delineation, and it's, kind of slopes the property down, and that kind of really dictates sort of where the wetland ends up, going down slope. I would say to the side of the house where the project is proposed, it's more of a riverine type stream ditch area that then goes into a much broader wetland as you get to the back, which is a really nice system, I have to admit. Really, really great wetland. And the day that we visited there, it was wood frog haven. You just heard a lot of the wood frogs reproducing and doing their thing in the pond. So it's a very, very good system. And they're just proposing to add, to the existing residents, pushing outward towards that initial part of the more linear part of the wetland.
Thank you.
So just to show some of the photos, this is the property as seen from 40 Valley from the street. It has a slightly odd orientation because of topography and the wetland. So from the wetland is to the left there behind, and the main entry is through this part. And there is a patio up on the hill, but we're seeking to build a deck off the main living area, which unfortunately is overlooking the wetland. And it's really the only logical spot for for a deck, because it's a single-story house, so the bedrooms to this backside here. There's an existing patio at grade, which doesn't really get any use
Because it's off the bedroom.
because it's off the basement right now, and it's just not on the same. It's not adjacent to any of the areas, so they don't really have any where to have a deck. We're not proposing it in the wetland. We are off, and we are proposing some mitigation measures.
Before you get to mitigation, tell us the deck that you're proposing, is it being constructed on piers?
It's being constructed on piers, 5, 6, we anticipate 6 piers. It will also need a variance because it's off the side boundary, so the living room is facing the side setback, not the rear, so unfortunately it just triggers these two issues. There is an existing tree that we'll be maintaining. We reviewed it with Dennis. We're trying to keep the clearance back, and it will go in a lawn area off this side of the property. So this is a view coming the other way. So we go in this location here beyond this generator stair will come up.
It goes over the oil tank and between the generator and the propane?
It goes over the oil tank, it maintains all the clearances from the generator, and then it stops short of the propane tanks. So the footings will go in this zone here, a small path linking just through this section here to the stair, and it's really nothing fancy. It's just a deck. I mean, because I don't have one, and so there's an elevation here. Cross bracing because the land does drop off a little bit. A doorway will be added because right now there's two big windows. So a doorway coming out onto the deck, and hopefully they can enjoy the wetland from their deck. It's quite nice. You know, sort of have to go through this whole process, but I'm glad that it's
The process is so nice. I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
I enjoy the process. And then so we did review the site with Matt Pop and Dennis Corelli, and I believe Matt maybe can speak a little bit to some of the mitigation measures that we discussed with Dennis.
So I just have one question before you talk about mitigation. This existing basketball court? That is in or out of the setback. I'm not, I can't tell where the line is, I'm assuming the 100-foot is, you know.
The existing basketball court, the asphalt area was there before they came. Is it in the wetlands buffer?
I think
Looks
so.
like it is.
Yeah.
Is it there? I mean, are they requesting a variance for it? It was not brought up by the town.
It was there, how long have they been?
It's been there maybe 3 or 4 years. Not a long time. It's pretty.
And that was.
Hi, Philip.
there-
Matt Pop here, landscape architect, Environmental Land Solutions. I think the basketball court looks like it's been there a lot longer than 3 years. It looked not in that all great shape. So if you want, I can kind of just describe the buffer, the wetland. Kind of agree that the wetlands, surprisingly.
Let me just, if I can, just finish on the basketball court. So did they put it in or was it there before them? Do we know?
They did not put it in.
They did not put
I
it
can confidently say that they did not put it in.
Okay.
And it doesn't have approvals.
I cannot speak to the basketball court.
Yeah.
Is it something that they use or is it just something
I
that's kind of
think,
broken up?
the kids ride their bikes on it and probably throw some basketball, it's there. It has, a building permit application has been filed and it did not get brought up on the building permit, so as far as it may have a permit, I'm not sure, but it did not get raised in that.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you on the environmental side.
Okay, again, the deck will be raised, between the house and the wetland, right adjacent to the house is basically vegetated with, Pachysandra, border maybe 10 feet or so, maybe 8 feet wide. Then there's a thin lawn strip, before it gets to kind of the wetland buffer. Isn't that well, so it's kind of like a freedom lawn, I would call it. The plantings we filled in with native plantings along the buffer. There is some barberry in the buffer, but decided this time because they didn't want to disturb the buffer. There were, again, a number of wood frogs breeding in there at the time of the site visit. There's probably spotted salamander also. We're going to plant the native shrubs, mainly infilling along the buffer. when you get further towards the back, it looks like there may be a tree that fell down a while back, and we're trying to replace that with a native shade in the back. So I was pretty pleased to see that the quality of the wetland for, you know, kind of a residential neighborhood, and that, and the, you know, the basketball court, you know, to me, I was, if someone said 10 years or 20 years, I wouldn't be surprised. But it looks like it's been there for a long time. If there's any questions, I'd be, you know, happy to, you know, answer them. Again, I don't think the deck raised over the Pachysandra, a little bit of the lawn area, will impact the wetland. Gives them better use to think of the property. Allows them to go kind of walk around the property and access the side of the house.
So and this just came up today, so that's why I'm asking this, because it's not on the plan. Is this where the septic is? That's all I wanna try to clarify.
The septic is to the rear of the property.
Okay,
Yes.
so that could be it. So,
So that's another reason why, well, it's difficult.
right,
Yes, the septic is to the back.
right, so if the stone wall on the septic plan is in the same location as the stone wall on the mitigation plan, are some of those plantings going proximal to the laterals that are shown on this?
No, the septic is a lot closer. I did discuss it with the owner, and the septic actually is in that patch, and you can see it sort of in the satellite view, sort of in this location where it's sort of cleared, and I think it's on the side of that hill. But those plantings are going way back past that road. So I don't think that septic field reached its.
But some of the problem is that some of these laterals look like they fell under the wall. You know, this is from 1957, so I'm not.
Well,
I'm just saying, I need some confidence that, I have no problem with the plan, right? But I will have a problem with the plan, or I will be told that there's a problem with the plan by others upon review, if indeed some of these plantings would go where those laterals are. And if not, then that's another discussion, that's all. So that was the only thing I had paused, that gave me pause just at the moment, just to sort of verify where this is.
So I would think we could verify the location in the field before the plantings went in. And if there was a concern, we can relocate those plantings and then keep those plantings within the wetland buffer, you know, somewhere nearby.
Right, and, you know, I probably gonna go down your road here, with respect to, like, the opportunities for, you know, and when Matt and I walked it, we sort of agreed, you know, there isn't necessarily much, massaging that you wanna do sort of to the existing system, cause I was taken aback when I walked to the back at the quality of the wetland that I saw. I was like, wow, this hasn't been degraded at all, as opposed to, you know, other properties that have continual landscaping and maintenance, and you get, you know, the invasive creep and, you know, the pile of years worth of leaves just blowing or whatever, like you had none of that. So I think, you know, other opportunity just to sort of mitigate any runoff potential from what you're putting in, just so that it doesn't just go straight, you know, down the hill. I think that adds a lot of value to this as well, even maybe more so than some of the plantings, just in consideration of the system. And honestly, I know that this is not something you may have contemplated, but if there was any give and take with respect to removing some of that basketball court in the buffer, I mean, I would be open to credit for that as well, because that would be a certain improvement to the system, just removing that old asphalt. So these are just other considerations that hit me in light of just printing out this survey and seeing where the septic lined up in 1957, that's, because that's all I had, so. That was my only pause.
It sounds like you would want us to wait for a month to make sure there's confirmation about the septic location and the rest of it before we proceed.
Well, the problem is that, you know, if this, say hypothetically, if this was approved and then this became an issue during the building permit review, then yes, it would sort of unwind, oh, no, Dennis, they can't put any, you know, a waiver from the county to, and I'm just like, you wouldn't want it to get to that point, you know what I mean? And then saying, okay, we have to go back to the RV because now the mitigation can't unfold because of where this potentially lies.
But the court might be an opportunity to avoid that by modifying.
I was, right, going off of what you were saying when I discovered this, and I said, yeah, the court, that's the way to just
No way.
walk away from
The
all
whole thing
this.
goes away.
Exactly,
Right, then you have to worry about where you're going.
Right.
right.
That would become part of the mitigation.
So you sort of have like, you know, alternatives here. I'm not saying they're all preferred or, you know, necessarily the owner would want to, but just depending on how all this falls out with respect to the septic, you know, you may decide, you know, having the dominoes veer one way versus another way, you know, depending, you know, on what the results of the septic are, is something that, you know, you can consider it at that time, but at least you have a few alternatives, you know, to satisfy the if-then statement scenarios.
So maybe just so you can clarify, you're looking, I guess, from the owner's perspective, they're not looking to remove the basketball court if it's not essential. We would prefer to do mitigation measures and do some planting and build to the property because it's sort of tucked away at the back. No one's really, I mean, they play on it, but it's sort of not an issue until now. It could potentially becomes an issue. However, are you looking at the removal of the basketball court in lieu of mitigation measures? Or as part of?
I'm just saying that
What is it?
the way this is drawn up, for starters, I'm no septic engineer, but you're probably not supposed to build a stone wall over the laterals. And again, this is just what the survey is showing, so this could be wrong. But it wasn't included on the plans that were submitted, and this is all I'm looking at, so I just need a little more clarity as to what's going on the
We
site
need to
before I
locate
could
the septic.
dictate other things.
So then the owner should have a company come out and locate that septic. And provided that the septic is not interfering with the planting,
Then the
does,
planting,
does the board have any issues with the current plan being proposed?
Well, I for one would prefer to see the removal of an asphalt court in the setback as opposed to additional planting around the perimeter,
Okay,
especially if the perimeter seems to be in good shape from what
okay,
it sounds like.
so I could present to the owner then, potentially removing this basketball court in lieu of
The planting
the planting,
mitigation
the mitigation.
would be something to,
And if they,
Well, it all, I mean, also too, I mean,
if they prefer to keep it, then what, is there any flexibility on that decision for them, or?
well, then the other part would be
partial removal, I mean, you know,
partial, and then identifying the septic and where the plantings would go. All that would have to get vetted through.
Okay, so, keeping the plantings, locating the septic versus potentially removing the basketball court. And not doing mitigation.
I mean, I defer to the experts on it, but to me, removal of an asphalt surface in the wetland setback, to me, would be a more beneficial element to consider than some additional plantings that aren't gonna be as beneficial as they would be in other situations.
Well, I'll take this to the owners. If they are open to removing the basketball court, then I would amend the plan. And in that situation, Dennis, how would you feel the wetland is healthy enough and potentially does not require mitigation measures?
I mean, we're just trying to, again, like sort of offset runoff impacts. I think that's kind of what we're looking towards, so. That seems like to be the most direct way to do that, you know,
Okay.
the swap, so to speak. And I know this board has seen other applications where they've, you know, who shaves a driveway, who starts removing some of the patio or whatnot to sort of offset.
Are there, what other actions could they take with respect to controlling runoff from the new building?
I mean, I guess there's something, you know, you sort of have a slope on that side of the property, so it's possible to design, you know, some sort of like fringe drain or something that at least tries to capture some of what, you know, would slope down from the patio and the deck, and then try to promote the infiltration as opposed to just having a surface runoff into the, that sort of riverine ditch feature I was describing.
I think they may be open, they weren't particularly tied to the basketball court, they purchased the house, there was something there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was a feature, because I don't think it was on there.
You know, and that's why you would get
So-
credit for it if they wanted to go down that road, as opposed to, oh yeah, we built it, we're sorry, we got no permits, we'll take it out. That obviously is a different scenario, they're certainly not in that
No, it's, I mean, it's,
situation.
The size of the basketball court is larger than the deck.
it is, it's, you know, it's.
I would think that would by itself suffice as mitigation.
Okay, I can bring that
So-
to them, potentially.
So if they take the basketball court out, I imagine that area would become a lawn area, a kind of a level lawn area.
Better than asphalt.
It is a functional improvement over asphalt, I would have to.
No, yeah,
agree.
no,
Yes.
yeah.
Be a reasonable.
Yeah, yep.
Would anybody have an objection that if they came back and said, we would remove the basketball court, Dennis, we could leave it with you and they wouldn't need to wait till the next meeting?
Yeah, cause then,
As long as, they have to submit the plans to you, but we wouldn't have to wait for the next ERB meeting,
Would really appreciate that.
just as a way to.
So I think what I'm hearing is a motion to approve, subject to a modification to remove the basketball court. And
As a form of
as
mitigation.
the form of mitigation. And then if they decide they don't wanna do that, then
Okay.
still, then their
Then-
application's still alive and we.
Still alive,
Yeah.
get the septic flagged out,
Exactly,
go through that.
but this is a way for them to shortcut.
Sure.
right, cause then I'm not gonna worry about where the septic is.
Sure.
In fact, I'm sure for the septic's sake, I'd be happy that the basketball court would be removed and looking at it potentially in relation to where it is and upslope of the septic, so.
Feels like the days of the basketball court.
Probably were anyway, right?
Yeah.
Alright, so that is your motion, David? Do I have a second?
Second.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You too.
My team's on down.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We could do that, Felicia, and contingent approval.
Just destroyed a little boy's basketball.
Why not?
Okay.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Why not?
true, that's true.
And by the way, I did look, there's no
Worker.
basketball court on their property. I just
Okay,
looked.
I didn't think so, it's probably just, yeah, and from looking at it even, I don't think it meets any of the zoning setbacks, so you can't generate.
I wasn't sure until he took out the picture or something like that. That's right.
Oh, wow. So it's good to buy a house for somebody to.
We were never in
or
the-
whatever,
Right.
if you want something, you can just be like, look, I'll reel this in,
I'll
I'll
take
reel
this
this in,
out.
we're done, right?
Jackhammer.
Alright, the other item on our agenda is another wetlands permit for 231 Croton Dam Road. Dennis, would you like to orient us?
Sure, a little place called the Town of Newcastle is your applicant, and Sunny Ridge Preserve is a town park that was, yes, donated to the town, and it came with a dam. And that dam, which you will hear from our consultant Tectonic and Mark Lukasik, is now in a position where we have one of two choices. We either need to rehabilitate the dam or remove it. And it is much cheaper to remove the dam and than to rehabilitate it, and also from a wetlands and ecologist perspective, New York State DEC is advancing to, in this case, it's not quite perfect in terms of restoring riverine and fish spawning and fish migration habitat, because there's the lower Minkle Dam below the upper Minkle Dam, so that kind of stops everything there. But still, it's there's too many dams and not enough riparian corridors, so this would be an improvement once completed. So at that point, I will turn it over to Mr. Mark Lukasik, and we can go from there.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to hear us this evening. As Dennis said, my name is Mark Lukasik with Tectonic Engineering. Also on screen with me this evening is Casey O'Mara, one of our engineers on the project, Lori Bart on the regulatory and sediment side, and Chris Macho, regulatory. I've personally been working with the town on this project for about 10 years. Actually, probably more than that, when you think of it. And the project, as Dennis alluded to, has had two phases. One was a rehab versus decommissioning. And the town, as all towns do, has had a methodical approach to what to do next. And the decision has been made to decommission. Just one point of orientation here, this dam does not supply, the water body behind it does not supply any water, and the dam and the water body itself does not provide any flood protection or flood control out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a presentation from here, and hopefully I've got the rights to do all this. And I'll give it a moment to synchronize.
Looks
And
like
I
it's
will
working.
drop my camera because I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. All right. This evening, we really have two objectives. One, we are jurisdictional to your board. The work that we propose is a regulated activity. And so as a result, we need to appear here to gain your feedback and ultimately this board's approval. Secondarily, the town board, who is leading the seeker process for this project, also felt that this forum was probably the most appropriate for the public if they wish to hear, make comment, what have you. That would be an opportunity this evening. Dennis, I don't know, can someone let me know, is there anybody in the room that we can hear from this evening, if they wish?
There's nobody here live, and I didn't see any boxes pop up from the public, actually, so.
Okay. We will go through the agenda that you see on the screen here. And we believe we have made a complete application in accordance with the town chapter through the content that's provided in the application, the plans, the reports, the stormwater pollution prevention plan, and the information that we provide in this presentation tonight. Just a quick overview of what is on file with the town regarding this project. And away we go. So for general orientation, those of you not familiar with the preserve, you're in the western corner of the town, you're just north of Route 9. We are north of the Spring Pond Townhome community, which is the most northerly community in the town of Ossining, adjacent to this project. As Dennis alluded, there's a lower Minkle Dam, which impounds Purdy Pond below us. And then Upper Minkle is the first water body in the town of Newcastle. The Sunny Ridge Preserve, 20 plus acres. This project in itself is about 3 acres of water surface area today, and the water body is about 10 feet deep. Originally, this dam was an intermediate hazard. It was required by the state to have an engineering assessment performed in 2014. That found a number of deficiencies in the facility. Both Lower Minkle Dam and Upper Minkle Dam were ultimately upgraded to Class C, which is a high hazard dam status. As a result, the requirements for reconstruction for both dams, both the privately owned Lower Minkle and the town-owned Upper Minkle, were quite intense for high hazard dams. The town selected in 2020, during the pandemic, to decommission Upper Minkle Dam. And all that decision was based on a DEC funded alternatives analysis of what it would take for each particular approach. And that was debated and ultimately decided upon. I'm now going to turn over to Casey O'Mara and let her go for several slides here on the general engineering behind this project.
Hi, good evening. So first, I'm just going to go over kind of what drove the design of the decommissioning impoundment area once it was decided to decommission. So for a partial dam removal in New York State under DEC, for it to be considered decommissioned, you'd have to remove enough of the length of the dam such that you can pass the 100-year storm without impounding more than 1 foot behind the dam. So we used HydroCAD modeling software to determine, what amount of dam we would need to remove to achieve that. And also we would keep the closure dikes, which are on the other two sides, the southern and eastern side, those would remain, and we would just need to remove a portion of the western wall of the dam. We'd also be considering any impacts to the Lower Minkle Dam in terms of hydraulic impacts. We'd want to maintain the current flows to the Lower Minkle. So we looked at the 1, 10, and 100, and we've reduced the flows in the proposed condition because the Upper Minkle Dam doesn't provide really any detention effects. There's very little freeboard at the dam right now, so it doesn't take a lot to overwhelm the dam when looking at it hydraulically. And then we looked at the stability of the system in terms of erosion, and we modeled the different segments of swales for stability using Hydraulic Toolbox, a FHWA program. And we designed the stability for the swales. And then the other stability outside of those higher erosive velocity areas would be stable by plantings. And the mitigation plan is being prepared by Westchester County right now in partnership with Dennis, yours truly. So here's sort of a graphic representation of the design, where the cyan colors represent permanent pools of water, with the darker blue being where the water surface would be during the 100-year event. And the light tan is stabilized riprap swales connecting the areas. The ponds were formed, following the natural topography. So there already is sort of this shape wanting to happen under the water surface. And then you'll notice on the left, we have an area marked off for where we would put material when grading this out. So the intermediate ponds will be controlled by weirs that will overflow to swales down to the next pond area. And then lastly, rocks from the dam, it's a rock, dam can be reused within the impoundment area as stabilization or revetment, during the decommissioning. So this is the design profile where we're showing the dam on the left of the screen with the upstream area on the right. The line across the top is that existing water surface following the height of the dam. So that's where the water is now. And then, underneath it, you can see what our new profile would be with the 3 ponds in succession. We're showing sediment that would need to be removed in the crosshatch, along with going down below to the hard bottom and removing some to give capacity to the ponds. But you can see here the overall hydraulic grade of the design going down to Purdy Pond, which the lower Minkle Dam in pounds. Next slide. So then we considered, okay, we need to decommission this dam. How are we going to get to it? It's not in the most convenient location. We looked at different, potential access routes through, going through the Spring Pond development, or going through the park itself from above, being only on town property. But both of those were a lot less compatible with the grade and would require a lot more clearing. And so ultimately they weren't desirable access routes. We looked at going through some of the neighboring properties, and ultimately, in agreement with the homeowner, decided that this would be the most advantageous route to go through their property, and end up, after dewatering the impoundment, then using the impoundment, for the construction too. So this would be, accessed after the water is drawn down. They would use construction matting on the grass areas, stabilized construction entrances at the road and also entering the pond area, but then use construction matting to protect the ground surface from the construction vehicles going up the hill. There was minimal grading needed really for this access route. And I'll talk about in future slides, only, minimal tree clearing relatively. So this was determined to be the best access route. And at the end of the construction, as worked out with the homeowner, we'll be restoring the property. Mark, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll show that. So we're going to reseed areas of the grass that were damaged and give the homeowner a new gravel driveway with drainage improvements at the end of construction.
Can I ask, how much material do you plan on actually taking out? Is all the sediment gonna be put in the detention area?
Yeah, well, Lori's actually going to speak on that in a few slides. So we do have that quantified, and it will be staying on site, but we will get into that in more detail. So the tree removal, there's about 5 trees right over the property line on the town's property that are being removed. Based on the ordinance, based on your ordinance, we would need 18 replacement trees based on their diameter. And we are proposing for the mitigation plan 201 trees. So we are, far surpassing what we'd be required to replace in this project.
If I could just add, one of those trees is growing up through, I'm not sure the make and model of the old automobile from the days of Ed Gein and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but that would, yeah. So
does that mean more trees
as well?
Is that an extra
No,
special tree, or is that?
I think you've accounted for that tree. That's why I
Okay.
was trying to add that.
Extra
Yes.
credit for removing the shed at the same time.
Yes. There's no automobile replacement. Just
Yeah.
just trees.
Is Bob going to ask for a car replacement for that for that vehicle? So there were trees downstream of the dam that already have been felled by the town, as part of really the ongoing maintenance of the dam, to not have the tree growth on the dam itself. So we wouldn't be removing any trees further downstream because they've already been removed. And now I'm going to pass it
now
off
we'll
to
switch
Lori.
gears to Lori and Chris, and we'll cover a bit about the environmental setting of the Upper Minkle Dam and the water body impounded behind it.
Good evening. So the project area is presently comprised of about 3.03 acres, which this is the land that's presently below the ordinary high water mark of Upper Minkle Pond. And it also includes approximately 0.42 acres of wetlands, which these wetlands occur just downslope of the dam, and they're a result of water seeping below the dam. After the dam removal and habitat restoration enhancement, they're anticipated to be 0.28 acres of intermittent stream and water bodies, 0.54 acres of wetlands, and 2.63 acres of uplands. And we're presently preparing the permit applications for submittal to the DEC and Army Corps, as well as this permit application to the town. Okay, so you already saw this map from Casey. I'm going to go over exactly what regulatory, what will occur below the ordinary high water mark or in the wetlands. So stay on this slide for a bit, Mark. So it's going to involve a removal of a minimum of 45 feet of the dam, which this is slightly off north-south orientation. So I'll just say on the kind of upper left-hand area there. It's also going to involve the draining of Upper Minkle Pond. A control weir will be stabilized, and the downstream channel will be stabilized with riprap to prevent erosion, and this will be in the tan areas as well. On the edges of the riprap, the 2 to 4 foot high boulder revetment will be installed adjacent to the existing concrete buttresses of the dam. A meandering channel will be installed in the low area that runs approximately east to west in the central portion of what is presently Upper Minkle Pond. And the 2 small ponds will be created in the central portion of the pond, the blue areas here, and on the right side of the image, a four bay will be installed. And the sediment that is removed during the work will be placed in that southwestern portion of what is presently Upper Minkle Pond, which is on the lower left hand here. And it will be capped with 2 feet of imported soil, which will be Class A. And Mark, you could skip through the next 2 slides.
Well, your pictures are so nice.
Yeah. And you could skip through this one too. Yeah. And now it's going to you could go back one, and it's going to Lori.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, so as over the years, obviously sediment collects behind the dam itself. So as part of classification of the sediment that needs to be excavated as part of the dam decommissioning, we conducted on-site sampling to classify the sediment. And then as part of that classification, we compared the results to TOGS to determine the appropriate reuse criteria of the sediment. All the sediment identified as Class B or C sediment will be capped with materials meeting the Class A criteria. And then in addition to that, we also during the sediment sampling, we did probing of the sediment to determine the depths and the approximate thickness of the sediment across the pond area. The thicknesses range from approximately 1 to 2 feet throughout the impoundment area. The results of the sediment sampling indicated that the majority of the material met the Class B classification, with a couple samples up close to the dam area itself under Class C, and then the remaining of the sediment samples meeting the Class A criteria. Sample locations are shown on the following map. And you can see we did some upstream sediment sampling, downstream sediment sampling, and then sediment sampling within the pond area itself. Yeah. And then sediment, as a result of the sediment sampling, we developed a sediment management plan, which includes utilizing the existing dam as a downstream protection, dewatering of the impoundment through the siphon and then through a pumped sediment tank for lower depths, to lower the depths, placement and capping of the contaminated non-hazardous Class C sediments on site in areas south of the dam with limited drainage area. The placement of the contaminated hazardous Class B sediments outside of the erosion area and stabilizing of the area within the proposed 100-year limits. So the selected demolition of the dam structure, selective demolition of the dam structure, sorry, I apologize, sufficient to pass 100-year with a less than a foot rise, and the mitigation plantings and final stabilization of the project area. You can go to the next slide. And then this slide shows the placement location of the Class C sediments in the area depicted in red. The advantage of this area is that it's close to the current location of the Class C sediments, which were up against the dam itself near in the deepest sediment area. And then it's outside of the 100-year event limits. It has a small drainage area, and there's a large potential storage based on the surveys that have been completed. This slide shows the calculated volume that Casey alluded to earlier, based on our probing and measurements, we calculated approximately 1,860 cubic yards of material that would be removed, while the estimated disposal area or estimated volume of area that is available for placement of the sediment is approximately 2,030 cubic yards. So we would have plenty of room to put the material and cap it in place as needed. And then as shown depicted on this drawing, the proposed potential fill locations for the Class C material is shown in the green with the hatching, and then the 100-year water surface shown in the darker blue are detailed on the figure.
Just curious, the classification of what is in the sediment, any idea of where is that naturally occurring or where that might have originated from?
We did, based on the upstream and sampling that we did, it appears that it's coming from potentially off-site. We don't know exactly where it's coming from, but it's elevated metals for the most part that put them in those classification categories. So, but as far as we could tell, because the upstream samples were a little high, and then it seemed to be that the metals were collecting down at the base of the dam.
Makes sense. Was there any point source history available that would identify where that might have originated from?
We didn't have any information identifying where it originated from, but it matched the previous sampling event that was done. And I apologize, I don't have the year in front of me right now, but it was probably done about 6-7 years ago, if not longer.
Right, and like these aquatic systems that, basically are artificial basins, right? So they're just gonna be settling.
I was just
Right.
wondering, stop phase one or something
Right.
identified.
No,
Any point sources or
like lead is never, you only stopped using leaded gasoline in the 70s. It's not going anywhere. It's at its elemental stage, and this is where it all deposited and I don't want to say bioconcentrated because we didn't do any biological sampling, but this is where physically, you get the greatest concentrations, right? So, but to their point, like capping it, it's like twofold. One, you try to reduce, what potentially is, bioavailable because below a few feet, you're not getting as many organisms that are going down that low or whatnot. And then, of course, you could have a little bit of Reagan magic with the dilution is the solution to pollution. So you get a little of both in that matter. So that's kind of how you take care of that.
So Westchester County has prepared a mitigation and landscaping plan. And the plantings have been chosen to reflect the species mix that naturally occurs in reference floodplain areas within the preserve. Also a mix of other local ecotypes plants will be added. The intent of this mixing is to provide additional diversity while recognizing well-established species can provide the cover necessary to combat non-native invasive plants. The species to be planted within the mitigation areas include native trees, shrubs, and herbaceous plant species that commonly occur along wetland and pond edge communities in southeastern New York State. Once established, it is anticipated that the wetland mitigation areas will significantly improve the diversity of wetland vegetation and contribute to the abundance and diversity of wetland fauna. So right now you're looking at a copy of page 1 of the mitigation plan, which is 2 sheets. The plantings, they will be protected and they'll be monitored for survivability and stem density. And the planting areas within the impoundment.
The cover material for the spoils is just a grass area?
I think it's just gonna be seeded, yes.
Yeah.
What is currently where the spoils area is? What are there trees that are gonna get
No,
lost?
it's subaquatic at this point. That's part of the
I see.
underwater,
I
yes,
see.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think just to help everyone, Casey alluded to the 2 dikes that exist out here as well. So in the heavy colors, in the middle of the screen is the dam that is going to be selectively demolished and decommissioned. But the more southerly, as Chris alluded before, the southerly dike adjacent to a residential property will remain. And it is there, as dikes are, to essentially close off about a foot and a half worth of elevation to get to the level that the water body is at today. And then there's a short extension running northward on the east side of an additional dike. Those 2 structures, there are embankments that exist on either side of them. They will all remain. And the grave for the sediment here is a rather deep portion of the existing water body, and it makes quite a useful location for the material to be stored.
And yeah, the planting areas within the old impoundment are divided into general communities that radiate out from what will be the new stream channel. And the wetland community will be situated close to the water, as these are the areas that are most likely to be inundated during storm or high water events. And you could go to so adaptive management is a process that it emphasizes using lessons that you learn while you're performing mitigation or management activities to guide future decision making. The post-construction monitoring will help determine whether actions or adjustments will be necessary to facilitate the success of the mitigation plan. Monitoring will be performed between June 15th and September 15th, most notably during the peak of the growing and fruiting season. Examples of factors that will interfere with the success of the mitigation plan include invasion of weeds or invasive plants, browsing or grazing by wildlife, failure of introduced plantings due to drought conditions, acts of nature that severely damage restored areas, and damage resulting from human activity. Our site monitoring will stress identifying and the early detection of and control of invasive species and any other circumstances that may affect the success of the mitigation plan. Next slide. So yeah, a minimum of 2 site visits per year will be performed by Tectonic for a minimum of 5 years. Site visits will be performed during the growing season. The results of each monitoring survey will be used to determine whether additional management measures are necessary to facilitate the success of the mitigation plan, and annual monitoring reports summarizing the status of the monitoring and any maintenance activities that are performed and or recommended during the year will be prepared and submitted. And a variety of methods are available for controlling invasive plants and the selection of the method will depend on which plant species are invading and the extent of their occurrence.
And lastly, for our side of things here as the presentation side from the schedule, obviously tonight we're here with you seeking information and feedback from this board. It was an opportunity for the public to come as well and hear what we had to say and comment if they saw anything additional. The town is in the process of wrapping up those access negotiations that Casey alluded to earlier. Those are expected and hopefully will be wrapped up in the coming months. The seeker I mentioned earlier, lead agency is the town board for this project. They have requested the ability to conclude seeker before we return to you one more time, just to obtain your decision at that point in time. So we're not asking for a decision necessarily this evening. And from there, we embark on our state and federal permitting processes with Corps and the DEC. And later this year, construction funding is in process with Westchester County. There's a intermunicipal agreement between the town, county for approximately 50-50 share of the cost of this project. With our approvals in hand, public bidding would be second half of 2025. And construction for these types of projects, we like to start them late in the year as the temperatures are dropping and we can evacuate the water and the sediments don't smell as much. Removes a lot of the nuisance factor, and that leads us into the prime growing seasons in the spring for establishment and getting moving there. So our construction season would be late 2025 into wrapping up by about summer of 2026. There is some monitoring that the town is embarking on a regular basis on this high hazard dam in its current condition. Once we drain the water with the contractor, that monitoring will end. And as Chris stated just a few minutes ago, mitigation monitoring is 5 years. We don't expect the Corps to budge from that, and we'll be doing that until 2031. So with that, we'd like to see if you have any direct questions. You want to discuss any topics where we'd like to go from here.
Thank you, that was very thorough.
It's above my pay grade.
I mean, I read the early reports from the decommissioning. I've walked the dam. I've toured the place a lot. This makes a ton of sense. I mean, I don't have any questions for that.
What would you think invasive growth would be when that type of material is exposed?
No, and it's a good question. So, it's funny because obviously they gave this presentation to the town board, and someone I think asked that question in a different way, saying, what is this going to become? Like what, how is this going to? So I'll start with the wetlands. Like this preserve, what feeds this dam, there are existing streams that are flowing through waterways, that are flowing through these palustrin forested areas where the understory, it's like skunk cabbage, tussock sedge, sensitive fern. And I would imagine, because I think I see in the plan that they only propose trees, shrubs, and seeding. And, I walked with the county person, Suzette Lopane, who is responsible for sort of helping us application-wise, getting funding-wise, and doing the plan. And the day that we walked, if you recall, last year was one of those heavy smoke days, if you remember the forest fire. So we were like, outside in Sunny Ridge Preserve. But she's very knowledgeable about the plants, and we had great exchange and told her, what is here, and we saw what was there, and she was making adjustments in the field, which I definitely always look to promote, what's growing there. I always like to listen to what a site's going to tell you. So I feel in time, the wetland side, unless we get frag intrusion, I'm not as worried about that. In the land of the uplands and full sun, always worry about that, always. So, you know, I agree with Mr. Camacho, it's like early detection, I mean, you know, if you start seeing, I guess Frag sometimes likes to migrate there, but you know, if you're seeing Oriental bittersweet, if you're seeing any of these typical, you know, like the new disturbed environment and full photo period, you know, that's just something, it's, you know, we don't use pesticides, herbicides on town parks, so it would be, you know, that's the time to just start pulling. I mean, you know, and you could theoretically, because this is all, you know, early successional, it's the time to do it, unless it's such a problem, then, you know, we may have to make some other considerations, but under the adaptive management comment, I think that's, you know, how you would,
That's the sequence. of
yeah,
trying
be like
to
a
address it.
contingency, yeah.
Cause that side of Sunny Ridge isn't heavily invasive, there's a ton of healthy mountain
No.
waters up in the water. The north side of Sunny Ridge is a nightmare of Barbary, but the rest of it's fine.
Great, well, thank you.
We'll be seeing you again in summer, is that what that's what we're doing next?
Yeah, because I think there was a message which Mark alluded to, that was we want the process to be that the town board as lead agency issues sort of a negative declaration for the project, and then ERB could, you know, consider issuing the wetlands permit. Because if you reverse that, if something happens with respect to the seeker, then it may change the project, which then puts them back here anyway, because you approve something that now is not applicable, so. But this was, you know, not only to present it to the board, but as Mark alluded to, you know, this was actually presented to the town board, I think the month before the world changed and COVID shutdown. And so it was done live. And I remembered a few residents were in this room with the town board, and one individual was not pleased that, you know, this aesthetic was gonna change, that I'm gonna lose my open water, you know, like to fish. I get it, that's, people like open water for a variety of reasons. It's not the highest quality functioning habitat in the world of wetlands, but it is something that humans do appreciate. But when I was attempting to sort of in person take care of the notification to the neighbors, I ultimately had to mail some. The few people I spoke to remembered me, because I went around with Bob when we were, you know, first looking to get that ingress egress to see what owners would potentially be amenable to that. And others, you know, to me looked like a residence, but didn't answer the door. And a couple looked like glorified storage facilities. It didn't look like anybody was living there. And one gentleman who I handed it to, a nice older guy, he says, yeah, I'm actually moving out at the end of the month. I can't afford the taxes anymore, but I'll leave this for the new owners. And I said, okay, thank you very much. So it wasn't the same, at least I didn't feel it, you know, trying to do boots on the ground, you know, PR, didn't feel the same vibes as I did in 2020, whatever that's worth, you know, so. And we did send it also electronically to the management of Spring Pond Association, and he said yes, and I sent them live links for everything. And there's nobody from Spring Pond on, so I guess they're not concerned from a design perspective, because that's why what you
Nobody
see.
with canoes in their backyard.
Right, well,
Well,
that's why you see
it's
it's,
dock.
there is elements here of stormwater management design within that main corridor. That's not necessarily wetland restoration, that's, we don't wanna see any extra flow as a result of you taking this dam down onto our property downstream, so that's what helps to account for that.
If they replace the sign at the entrance to Sunny Ridge that burned down, whatever, 9 months ago, it might be a good place to do communication for people to come. Just to say, this is going to change, not to
Mhm.
say, like, we want your input, no. You know.
Right.
It's, but people, it's busy, people really do show up from all around that parking lot.
What, I'm sorry, what?
The parking lot in 134, there was a big welcome to Sunny Ridge sign there.
Oh, I see.
Remember? Someone torched it.
Oh, okay,
It's a little weird.
all right. So you'll be stealing the plants then after they're installed, you know, for the restoration.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have
Have a good
night.
evening.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Do we have to vote on anything?
No, they said not at this time.
Excellent,
They'll be coming back one other time.
even better.
Okay.
We can vote on closing.
I was gonna say, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes, thank you.
All right.